appreciate it. Awesome. Thank you all so much for hanging out. It's the last day in the afternoon after lunch, so I'm going to try my best not to put you all to sleep, but hopefully this is interesting. Thanks for sticking it out with me. So I just want to kind of get a sense of who's in the room. Just curious if there's any educators. Do you have any educators in the room? Nice, very nice. And then any developers or VR enthusiasts who know a lot about the technology? Great. And is anybody just here for the vibes? That's very valid too, super valid. So before we really jump in, I wanted to give you sort of a little bit of background on who I am, sort of my professional journey. So my name's Kaylee Seely, as she said. I'm the head of Immersive at Pearson Labs, which is part of the big company, Pearson, right? Education company. I started out my career in editing, actually. If you see any typos on my slide, please don't judge me. I have an alter ego. Her name is Edith. I pull her out of the basement every once in a while to preview my stuff, but she might be a little bit rusty, so if you see anything, I apologize. But I started out my career in newspapers, magazine editing. So then I moved into Pearson. I started out in the K-12 school assessment business in the US, so editing those end-of-level tests that students take. And while I was doing that, I went back to school to get my MBA and became a project manager in school assessment. So you might see some school assessment parallels in this presentation. I talk a lot about school assessment in general, just that's how we change education. While I was working in the assessment industry and doing my MBA, COVID happened, and all of the school tests that year were canceled, and they asked if anybody wanted to raise their hand for innovation projects. And I was taking some technology change classes, so I raised my hand, and that's how I met my now boss, Jody, who is an innovator extraordinaire, and I joined Pearson Labs. So I want to make sure you saw all of their beautiful faces. This is my team. We've grown quite a bit, so we started out with just Jody, me, and Sarah. And they are some of the most brilliant people I've ever met. They each come with unique background and experience that really helps us achieve our mission, which is primarily to disrupt Pearson, and in turn disrupt the education industry utilizing new and emerging technologies like immersive technologies. We are an applied research and development team that focuses on building prototypes of new products and services and forecasts the future and tries to help Pearson reach that future. We're held in the Central Technology Office, so we report to our CTO, Dave Treat. And we cover all of Pearson divisions. So we work with K-12, English language learning, remote learning, higher ed, enterprise learning and skills. We sort of cover the gambit of that lifelong learning journey. I'm the only one on this team who is in the US. All these other folks are based in the UK and in Poland, so you may see me around at US conferences often since I cover those. But when I first joined the team back in early 2021, I started out in Immersive, and I never wanted to leave. But of course, like many of you, professionally, I've been in the immersive space for 4 years, but I have been an enthusiast long before that. So back when you'd see VR arcades popping up, and you'd go to Dave & Buster's to go experience, attacking zombies or whatever. And then when VR really hit the consumer market, my brother, who I credit a lot for a lot of my VR knowledge early on, he bought a big, supercomputer and the VR rig that you were tethered to, and he'd bring it to Sunday dinners at my parents' house, and we'd all kind of have a go at whatever he had found recently. As far as innovation and my rebelliousness, since I'm on an innovation team, I like to say that an innovator's mindset can be taught, but a lot of it is centered around who you are as a person. So I got married recently, as you can see, and my dad, thank you, I appreciate it. And my dad at my wedding, he told the same story he told my husband when I first introduced them to the family. It's his favorite story to tell about me, but I've always been rebellious even as a child. So when I was about 5 years old, he was playing with me and he picked me up and he said, "I must break you." And I said, "You know, break me, Daddy." And I feel like that is really at the heart of what it takes to be an innovator, is not to be broken in the face of adversity. I love breaking the status quo. I love challenging people and assumptions. Hopefully I do it in the right way. And I really love having my own mind changed. Finding creative ways to solve problems really gives me life. And honestly, I believe the best relationships come out of adversity, not necessarily when things are going well. So enough about me. Let's get to the important stuff, which is immersive technology and how it's already impacting education and how we can take that even further. That's why we're all here at AWE, hopefully, is to help create the future. So here's our agenda for today. And look at that, we're already 17% complete. I'm rounding up, I love data. So we'll talk about the current state of immersive in education, how it's showing up in the education industry today. We'll talk about one use case of immersive technology. that I would consider to be sort of a unique way and to kind of open up creative thinking about how we can use this technology in new ways. We'll then talk a little bit about AI. Since it's 2025, this wouldn't be a presentation if it didn't include some aspect of AI. So we're going to talk about how that's showing up in education and how we can use that to take education even further. And then we'll finish up with the future of immersive education, where I see the education industry going in the next 10 years. And if we have time, we'll do some Q&A, but this presentation, we're covering a lot. So if not, then definitely catch up with me after. Happy to talk to anybody. All right, so let's get into how immersive technology currently shows up in education. I wanted to first level set on how Pearson Labs defines immersive technology, especially in an educational context. So these are any technology or digital innovation that creates or enhances a sense of presence and engagement by blending the physical and digital worlds. And those two words are key for us: presence and engagement. This goal is currently being realized through the following technologies. So you see, obviously, VR, AR, MR, what you consider extended realities. That's what everybody thinks of when they think of immersive technology. But it also can include things like virtual worlds, so the Fortnites and the Robloxes, and I have just aged myself like saying the Instagrams, right? Now I'm old. But these spaces can also create that same sense of presence and engagement in learners and students and kids. It requires active participation in social spaces, and virtual worlds can be accessed in a variety of different ways, including things like immersive screens, right? Like the big view screens, you don't have to have wearables, but you can still participate in those kinds of spaces. We also include holographic 3D displays, can be used without any wearables. And then you also have sensory technology that we include in this definition. So again, anything that you see that can create that sense of presence and engagement in students. As far as how this all really relates to education, the biggest thing for me is that it's interactive. So you see a lot of passive immersive experiences being used in education currently. So somebody sort of just watching actors in a 360 video acting something out. That doesn't really create the same sense of presence for me. That's not really a great use case, I don't think, of this technology, like that being able to interact and students being able to write their own story, determine their own destiny, right? Taking action. That's really what makes it, go from here to here. So when we think about immersive technology in education, currently the best use cases we're seeing at Pearson relate to Stanford's DICE framework. You may have seen this before if you've been in the space for any amount of time, but DICE stands for dangerous, impossible, counterintuitive, and expensive or rare. So these are experiences that make for great immersive experiences, especially for education. So if we look at things that are dangerous, this can be certain harmful chemicals that are in a science lab for K-12 students, or scientists interacting with radioactive materials. Students can explore an active volcano as it's erupting. And then there's also a lot of flight simulators for new pilots. Another example could be getting on a train in a foreign country, having to explain to the employee, I really didn't mean to interrupt the closing doors, please don't fine me or arrest me. May or may not have been a personal experience I had. But these are things that are dangerous to do in real life, but that can be realized through immersive education. You can also use immersive technologies to accomplish things that would otherwise be impossible. So visiting Saturn and seeing its rings, or seeing the scale of the solar system, seeing how quantum computing works on an atomic level, practicing heart surgery with no real world consequences, or traveling to Brazil and Portugal in the same day to compare the language differences of each of those places. Immersive technology is also great at accomplishing things that might be counterintuitive to do in real life. So dissecting the heart of a blue whale or a shark. There's not a lot of those roaming around, but you can do that in immersive technology. Simulating the build of a quantum computer, practicing emergency surgery in zero gravity, or traveling to the US to learn about cultural idioms and context. All of these things technically possible to do, but don't really make sense to do, especially for students who are just learning. And finally, you can open up expensive or rare experiences through this technology. So things like climbing Mount Everest, or excavating an ancient city in Egypt, training on a deep water oil rig, right? These are some examples of things you can do in immersive technology that you can't, that are expensive or rare to do in real life. So all of these different experiences that follow this DICE framework are things that we are gravitating toward in Pearson Labs and throughout Pearson as a whole. So now that we've explored sort of use cases more broadly, let's talk about the education market and how it currently stands in the education space. So we'll just take a section of the market for this presentation, because talking about each individual market that Pearson covers could be its own 25-minute presentation. So we'll talk about the traditional education market. What people usually think of is the K-12 market, as I think it's gotten the least amount of coverage in general, since people tend to focus on colleges, higher education. So just this week, the XR Association released its latest survey of teens and how they experience XR technology. Pearson's a member of the XRA, and you may have seen them out on the expo floor, and we have a couple of members here with us today. Thank you for showing up. I love working with these folks. They're fantastic. But my love letter for XRA aside, the survey that they've done here is, I included a link at the bottom as well, so you can check it out. But they had 600 participants in this survey, and they compared the results to a similar survey that they conducted in 2022. So compared to 2022, more teens are experiencing XR technologies, and over half of those have experienced it in schools. So this technology is making its way more and more into the mainstream education space. As well as a third of the students said that if a class had an XR technology component, they would want to take that class. And finally, the most heartwarming statistic to me on this slide is that 63% of teens reported having positive experiences using XR technology. It made them feel included, regardless of disability, language barriers, all of that kind of stuff. We love inclusion in education. So we've touched on the types of immersive experiences that are good for education and the market, but since we are Pearson, we also want to make sure that the immersive technology is efficacious for learning. So we have to ensure that the outcomes of all the products and services we work on follow good learning science and result in mastery for students. So in addition to all the other resources out there that point to the efficacy of learning in immersive reality, or immersive technologies, Pearson's efficacy and research team has published a literature review and infographic on the efficacy in learning and how teachers and decision makers can choose the right immersive experiences for their students. So this includes things like making sure the cognitive load is correct for students, so the complexity of the experiences is at the right level. There needs to be interactivity, which we've touched on before, and students aren't immersed in an experience for too long, so 20-ish minutes, 20 to 30 minutes is the current guidelines around that. So if implemented correctly, these experiences can be extremely efficacious for students and help them remember content long term. After all, if you're engaging more senses in an experience and you're reaching a different part of their brain than you could normally, which is a huge help for memory and recall. So if you're including a full body experience like tactile and hearing and seeing and doing, you're going to remember those experiences much more long term. So now that we've gone over the current state of immersive technology in education, I wanted to show you one specific use case that I've been absolutely obsessed with lately. To preface this, I wanted to say that there is a lot of focus in the market currently on sort of traditional education use cases. So there's tons of examples of corporate trainings and workforce upskillings. You can just walk the expo floor to see a lot of those things. So if you see this use case, it might seem odd at first, but just stick with me. I wanted to focus on this because at first glance, you might not consider this to be educational, but I'm hoping that it can inspire you to think outside the box a little bit more. I want us to start thinking about how creative we can be using immersive technology in education. So this is Grand Theft Hamlet. During COVID, a group of actors tried to recreate Hamlet in the popular game Grand Theft Auto. And this is a game that's rated M for mature, so I have to put a little bit of a content warning on here. There's no serious swears in here, so don't worry about that. But it really embodies how people are using this technology in new ways, and it inspired me a lot as to think about how we can use virtual worlds and gaming to reach students in new ways. And Hamlet's obviously a very educational use case. I think we all probably studied Hamlet in some way or form in school. So I think this really brings this idea to life.
Go, yes? Go, do it now.
Okay. We are putting on a production of Hamlet in GTA Online for the first time ever. We are looking for actors, so come and audition. Please try to stop us. You can't stop our Oh. They got me.
Oh my god, they're really coming down now, look.
To be or not to be, that is the question.
You're welcome to audition if you want.
You're crazy, no? Okay, don't shoot us, please.
Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against the sea of trouble.
No one's going to come.
No one cares.
It's not a real thing.
It's real to me.
Oh, hang on.
Someone's here.
Whoa.
Hi.
That's quite an entrance.
You can call me Shah.
I'm Jen. I'm Tilly.
I'm Defoe. My name's Gareth.
While you're doing your dance move, try saying to be or not to be, that is the question.
Look, my lord, it comes.
It's like Shakespeare on $1 billion budget.
Cops are here.
Maybe he's a purist.
We just keep coming across these people who want to help us. That gives me hope that what we're trying to do is possible.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Grand Theft Hamlet.
So you can see how an experience like this can really bring people together, right? People are talking about Hamlet in totally different ways. They can be so creative with it and do things in such, unique contexts. So as the technology use increases and these experiences become more ubiquitous and be able to be accessed in a variety of ways, including in more immersive contexts, imagine what we can do in this field. How can we make education as engaging as this? So let's get into AI and how that's impacting all of this and how we can use AI to make education even better. So there are three main areas that AI is really showing up in developing educational experiences. We'll mainly focus on examples relating to the second and third areas here, using AI to create 3D assets as sort of cross-industry and not education specific. And I'm sure a lot of folks here have been talking about 3D asset creation tools like Meshi and like Skybox. If you haven't played with those yet, would highly recommend. But specific to education is the delivery and feedback loops that can be greatly enhanced using AI. So first is how we can use AI to deliver content in new and unique ways. With AI, you no longer have to send students down a set path or a branching narrative when you're doing learning experiences, when you're designing these experiences. You can have experiences way more personalized and allow students to make decisions and show creativity more than in previous years. I'm a huge proponent of students being able to chart their own course and go on their own journey where they're the hero of their story. And one of the biggest takeaways from a recent experience I had beta testing an AI product is students who told me, I loved that I could make my own decisions. I loved that I wasn't told what the options were and I had to pick from the options. I could really be creative in where I take the story. In terms of feedback, this one might be a little bit more obvious, and I know that a lot of companies in the space are doing this, but AI is a huge help when it comes to providing personalized feedback for learners. Students can participate in role-play experiences, get instant feedback, and they can submit presentations and don't have to wait for a teacher or professor to read them and then get back with them with feedback. And as a side note on this, I know there's a lot of concern about AI sort of taking over teaching. I've never really been concerned about that, just because if you think about your favorite teacher you've ever had, I'm willing to bet it wasn't because they graded papers really fast and they gave you really good feedback on this one essay. It was their passion for the subject, and that made you passionate about the subject. And that's really what a teacher's role is, and they can now do that a lot more freely by utilizing some of these AI tools. So all of this comes together to help students realize what they're good at and what they know how to do. And I'm obsessed with this idea of metacognition. That may mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but for me, it's that I know what I know and I know how I know it, right? And AI can quite literally speak their language in a lot of different ways when it comes to feedback, so they know what their strengths and weaknesses are. They can have metacognition in a way that's been severely lacking in the education industry up to this day. So our first example is Mondly. This is a Pearson language learning product. And this is about how we can use AI in the delivery of learning experiences. So if you can imagine having an NPC that's connected to an LLM, how customized could this experience be for a user? How creative can they be to learn in this way? They can really rely on their curiosity to learn and explore.
Along to the performance review. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. Let's dive into our review.
So I won't play the whole video because we're running a little bit short on time. But just imagine Mondly is our current in-market VR solution as well. So you can sort of imagine the possibilities. This is shown on tablets and phones, but possibilities are endless on sort of where this technology gets implemented next. My second example is one about AI feedback, and it's an app you may have heard of called Body Swaps. So you do some sort of public speaking event or interview and get feedback not only on your arguments, but also things like eye contact and body language and how much you use your hands, which I'm probably using a lot of as I present. I know I have that problem. But having instant feedback in these contexts is super helpful. And there's tons of apps like this sort of currently in the market. I won't play this video either, but I don't know if they're posting these presentation materials, but if anybody wants this presentation, I'm happy to send it to you afterward. So let's shift our focus to what the future can look like when we include immersive education as part of a student's educational journey. So what can we create with these technologies that will move us forward in huge leaps in the next 10 years or so? So here's what I see the future of education being. The future of education is personalized. And we've talked about this, and I've been harping on it, so forgive the repetition, but education can truly be personalized in a way now that it couldn't be before. So using both AI and immersive technologies, we can deliver highly personalized experiences to students that touch on their passions and their interests. We can put them in environments that they may never have been able to experience before, and we can teach them in ways that work best for them. So students who learn best by doing, we can now let them do basically anything using immersive technology. They can create, they can partake, and they can participate in ways that are best for them to learn. Even though education can and will be highly personalized, it will also be very collaborative. No more purely solo learning experiences like worksheets and reading from a textbook. We can create communities of practice. Kids especially love to talk about their learning, what they're doing, and with personalized experiences, they now have even more to share with their classmates and their peers. They can compare notes, and we can put them in multiplayer learning experiences and in a much more authentic way. Group work suddenly becomes much more engaging using immersive technologies, and any teachers in the room can probably attest that when students get excited about a lesson, they get loud and they talk more, and that's exactly what we're after. The future of education is also realistic, and I don't mean that we're going to get rid of all the avatars and all the gamified experiences, because those things are still important in the right contexts. What I really mean is that education will teach the right skills for the world today and in the future. So education should support life. Life should not support education. We need to be preparing students for the future that they'll actually face and teach them the skills that they'll need to succeed there. So you can think of these soft skills, transferable skills, whatever you want to call them. They can all be taught much more authentically and in a much more engaging way using immersive technology. The future of education is engaging. It's gamified and touches on students' interests and passions. I love the idea of gaming and learning. And if you couldn't tell by the Grand Theft Auto example from earlier on, the root of gaming science and why students play games, why kids love to play games, is actually deeply rooted in learning. So students are allowed to have curiosity and to follow that curiosity and learn. Video games are all based around problems to solve, and what are we doing in education? We're teaching kids and students how to solve problems. So you add interactivity into all of that, and suddenly you have something really, really special that they can influence the world, they can follow their curiosity, their passions, their interests. Finally, and most importantly, education will be limitless. These technologies really allow learners to find out who they are and to be who they are. They can reach their full potential and even beyond. Suddenly, learners are not being held back by education. Education finally becomes the means for them to find out who they are and how they can contribute to the world. They have no boundaries in where they can go, what they can experience, the type of problems they can help solve, and they can access education whenever and however they need it. They have the world at their feet. They can go out and explore anything and everything. So I'll end here with a quote from Plato that I feel like embodies my educational philosophy, and that's, "Do not train a child to learn by force or harshness, but direct them to it by what amuses their minds, so that you may better be able to discover with accuracy the peculiar bent of the genius of each." Gone are the days of education creating factory workers. We're all individuals with strengths, weaknesses, and skills, so let's allow our students and learners the freedom to find their own path forward. Find what they're excited about and how they can contribute to the new world, and that's really the way that we're going to make the world better. So here's a QR code for my LinkedIn profile. Please reach out to me if you have any ideas that you'd like to partner on to try and create an education. I love talking to other innovators about ideas that can help us create better outcomes for our learners and educators. Labs loves co-creating immersive, innovative experiences. So thanks again for sticking around this afternoon. Let's create the future of education together.